And welcome to this episode of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests, as we have today, Amy Rugg, guide you through the world of online communications in the show, which was the brainchild of the late, great, much missed internet guru, John Popham. John, we hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, up there probably somewhere. And as usual, we check on the weather. We have a weather forecast. Let's check with you first, Sweyn. Where are you and what's the weather like there?
Well, I'm in Kirkwall in Orkney, and I can look out the window and it's a lovely, calm day, very unusual. The trees are hardly moving at all because we do have trees, contrary to popular belief. Yes, lovely day.
Good. And Amy Rugg, our special guest today, where are you and what's the weather like there?
Oh, well, Pauline, I'm in Coventry in the West Midlands of England, and I'm just looking out. And although the sky is quite grey, our office looks out on Coventry Canal Basin. It's quite a nice place to look out onto. And we've got a few boats in the basin today who are just passing through. Lovely. And so that makes the day a bit nicer.
Yeah. I'm always into doing surveys, so I think I'd be tempted to run out and ask every 10th boat whether they had Wi-Fi or how they how they use the internet or whatever. I used to be in an office that had I was near a canal, but it was before I didn't do a survey then, but I'd like to do it now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So welcome to the show. We're delighted to have you here. We heard about you through Rob Allison, an old friend of mine from when I worked in Coventry, and we hear you've been doing some very exciting things, and we're looking forward to hearing more about them. But before that, we'll just cover some of our usual parish notices. And for March, from the 1st of March to the 31st of March, the Samaritans, amongst other charities, are doing a challenge. And if I stand up, you might be able to see the Sweyn's going to put it on screen.
Wait a minute.
The 30. I've got the T-shirt on.
Hey,
310,000 steps.
Didn't need to share the screen at all. It's all written on you.
Well, it's the first time I've worn the T-shirt, to be honest, but I have managed to raise some money already, which I'm very pleased about. I think it's the first time in a long time I've done one of these, so I'm very pleased about that. I couldn't work out at first, call me whatever. I couldn't work out 310,000 steps. What kind of
funny number?
But of course, 10,000 steps a day. Duh. If you, it's simple when you explain it. So, participants like myself are challenged to walk this many steps throughout March for the Samaritans, and they encourage us to keep track of our step count by keeping a record on our steps counter, and they've got one to download. But I also discovered my great friend Danny showed me how to that I already had a step counter on my phone.
Yes.
Who knew? Phones are everything these days, don't they, Sweyn? So yes, so I'm counting it on my phone. I can't say I've done 10,000 steps every day, but I have done about 3,000 or 4,000 at least every day. And I did 10,000 on the day I did park run, not last week, the week before. So it is possible to do it. It will take about an hour of walking every day, I've worked out, to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And the T-shirt obviously enables us to promote progress and share successes and stuff. And there's a Facebook group, so we can post updates on there too. And I'm happy to say that Facebook takes 0% of the donations that are coming through. So all the donations are going directly to Samaritans, and because we never forget about people who aren't online, there are offline ways of paying money that have been raised offline, because some people don't want to use Facebook or don't have it or whatever. So you can pay in by check, and there's an address for that, and we'll put that on the notes to this show afterwards. Okay, and so moving on, tomorrow, as everybody knows, is International Women's Day, 8th of March, same day every year. And this is commemorated as a UN Day, but it's celebrated up and down the country and all around the world. And obviously advancing gender equality in the context of the climate crisis and disaster risk reduction is a great global challenge in the 21st century. And women are increasingly being recognized as more vulnerable to climate change impacts than men, as they constitute the majority of the world's poor and are more dependent on the natural resources which climate change threatens the most. At the same time, women are and girls are effective and powerful leaders and change makers for climate adaptation and mitigation. They're involved in sustainability initiatives around the world, and their participation and leadership results in more effective climate action. So continuing to examine the opportunities as well as constraints to empower women and girls to have a voice, be equal players in decision-making related to climate change and sustainability is essential for sustainable development and greater gender equality. And the International Women's Day, they're saying, let's claim gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. So we can all get behind that. Another day that Sweyn has found on the 10th of March is International Day of Women Judges, another UN day. And this tells us that despite women's increased engagement in public life, they remain significantly underrepresented in decision-making positions. In fact, a relatively small number of women have been or are part of the judiciary, particularly at senior judicial leadership positions. And this isn't good because obviously if women are represented in the judiciary, they can ensure the courts represent citizens better or differently, address their concerns and hand down sound judgments. And by their mere presence, the blurb says that women judges enhance the legitimacy of courts, sending a powerful signal they're open and accessible to those who seek recourse to justice. The entry of women judges into spaces from which they had historically been excluded has been a positive step in the direction of judiciaries being perceived as being more transparent, inclusive and representative of the people whose lives they affect. So marking the day, we reaffirm our commitment to develop and implement appropriate and effective national strategies and plans for the advancement of women in judicial justice systems and institutions at the leadership, managerial and other levels. So the call is to join the UN in celebrating this first annual International Day of Women Judges to promote full and equal participation of women at all levels of the judiciary, celebrate progress that's been made, and raise awareness. Sorry, you're saying, Sweyn?
Sorry, I thought you were. I didn't realise this was the first one. I thought.
No, neither did I. So we're proud to be promoting and
I like the comments there about representation as well, because the thing I always think about representation is that the more diverse the panel of the makeup of judges or indeed any other profession, the more that the old white men have to speak to people with differences as equals in their roles. And I think that among many other, I think that's a really important thing for a lot of stuffy old professions is that it's not just the viewpoint of others looking at them, it's actually the behavior within the profession itself. If there's people of different backgrounds and different races, different genders, then even the old white men who don't want to think about these things are kind of forced to, because they have to interact day to day with people as equals, and that's a great thing.
Absolutely. Well, Amy, have you got a view on that?
Well, many years ago, in another iteration, I was responsible for all the health events for International Women's Day back in the day in Coventry, and I really going into it was very nervous about what would this mean and what would the response be from the public. But overall, I found that the public was overall welcoming, and that the people who were involved in actually the activities and the celebrations were created a fantastic atmosphere that was really positive. So, far from sort of setting up conflict, it actually was more about positivity and confirmation. And that was great.
Good. That's good to hear. Yeah, I've always enjoyed a good International Women's Day event, and my celebration tomorrow night will be joining a local sing-song for International Women's Day. So I'm looking forward to raising my voice along with other women.
Good stuff.
And non-binary people in that event. Yeah. So we come to a couple of events that we picked up as well. And on Wednesday, the 9th of March, from 4 to 5 p.m. GMT, that's 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, at SXSW EDU 2022, there's a session on, it's actually being live streamed on LinkedIn, exploring what's next in education. And I saw this on somebody else's LinkedIn, I can't remember where, and they're discussing how digital innovation enables and empowers learning virtually from anywhere. And so there's going to be a live talk with education experts about what's next, from access and equity to how 5G is fueling the future of learning. And Dr. Keisha King is going to be in conversation with people from the US Department of Education, the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, the founder of Victory XR, people at various education and business organizations, Lenovo, Austin ISD, Lockheed Martin and Tech Advisory Council, and the superintendent of Austin ISD. So I think that, it's interesting to us to kind of hear what's going on in other parts of the world around digital inclusion and digital innovation. So we're saying that might be of interest to people who follow this show. And the last of the events before we come to our special guest, Amy Rugg, is one on the 10th of March, which is South Asian Sisters Speak with Jaspreet Kaur, Finding Our Voices Online. And I spotted this one probably on LinkedIn or Twitter last night. And this is an event to explore how brown women have used digital activism to create spaces for themselves with Jaspreet Kaur, and special guests. And the blurb says that South Asian women have long been stereotyped as docile and quiet, but we're sure you all have stories of strength, bravery, and action when you think of brown women in your lives, whether it's family, friends, or you, whoever's listening. Online spaces like social media have been crucial for a generation of brown women to find their voices and speak their truths. So this group is excited to announce their next panel event series in collaboration with Jaspreet Kaur to celebrate the launch of her incredible debut book, Brown Girl Like Me. And I've seen that advertised on posters around Birmingham. They're coming together with Amina of Forward Culture and Kieran Kaur from Girl Dreamer, who's actually a friend of mine. Hi, Kieran. Good to hear your voice on my program today. And they've both founded incredible online spaces for brown women to discuss how brown women have been able to find their voices on the internet and in real life. So that's an event that's happening on Zoom on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. So that sounds like one not to be missed. Okie dokie. And so we come to our very special guest today, Amy Rugg. We're delighted you could join us. Amy is a volunteer coordinator at Crisis in Coventry. And she's a dual citizen who loves storytelling and listening to stories people tell her about their lives. She's a volunteer coordinator, as we say, for this local charity and a volunteer herself in her free time. She's the champion of her adopted home city of Coventry, a proud single mum, poet and essayist. And during the pandemic, she started an audio podcast, an online newsletter and training courses to reach out to volunteers, clients and colleagues isolated by coronavirus, which for her was a self-teaching experience, resulting in equal measures of both enchantment and terror. And we can relate to that. So her three unique offerings were the podcast, training clients to interview staff online, and their first online newsletter called The Volunteer, which is a great title. Amy developed her communication skills during the pandemic, including training volunteers, and used training tools like Jam Jar or Mural. She performed some poetry, one of which poem was published in an anthology last month. And she says that working online over Zoom has opened up opportunities for herself and others that wouldn't have been possible before the pandemic. So we're very delighted to welcome you to the show, Amy, and we look forward to hearing more about your projects during lockdown. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's wow, exciting to be here. This is the first time I've ever attended a live stream podcast. So thank you very much for inviting me. And it's fantastic. I love your weather report. And it's so good. It's so good.
Thank you. Well, we it's just nice to kind of ease people into the show, and I mean, it tests sound levels as well, obviously, for those interested in the technical detail. But it's just a nice way to start the day.
Yeah.
So we're delighted to have you, and
me too.
yeah, and it's I mean, Coventry has great memories for me as I worked there in the mid 90s, with the Coventry Irish Society. So what brought you to Coventry in the first place?
Oh, well, so I suppose that's a bit of a techno story. I was the backup exchange student after the really smart boy dropped out with chicken pox. And they said, don't mess up. Yeah, we're only sending you to this because otherwise we'd have to, the program has to run with a minimum number of students. So, get sharp, tell people that you know how to use a computer, because otherwise they'll think Americans are, cave people. And it turned out, this was back in the 80s, of course, my university had 5 computers. and they were for the IT students, the computer scientists. I was writing up all my papers by hand, lovingly hand knitting them, page
Lovely.
at a time. Yeah. So I eventually settled here and raised a family of 3 Coventry kids, of whom I'm very proud. Their dad was from the Isle of Man. I don't know if either of you have heard of that place.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yes, not been, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So there's that connection, and my family relies very highly on things like Zoom and FaceTime and things to kind of communicate. Yeah. So I guess that's how I wound up here. I had about 15 years working in the NHS, and then for the last maybe 15 years, I've worked for various charities, including where I am now.
Great. So it sounds like you had a bit of a baptism of fire on the digital front.
100%. Yes. Yes, there was a font full of fire, and they hit me right in it. So, I weirdly, I have always considered myself to be a friend of technology. I'm interested in it. I don't necessarily struggle with it. But when Coventry moved into Tier 1 during the pandemic, overnight, my job changed, my life changed, like so many of us, so many people all over the world. And I realized I would have to, up my game, tech-wise. So, for example, I had just started a new job in 2020, and at the end of January. So about 6 weeks after I started work, I was sent home with a little box of my office belongings and said, don't come back to the office because it's not safe. And I sat in my back room thinking, how do I reach out to my volunteers? How do I help our members? That's who we call the people that we support. How do I involve them? How can we volunteer when there are no venues? That I have been a volunteer coordinator, whereby I recruited volunteers to come and do something.
Sure.
That's what volunteers, they want to do.
Yeah.
And I want to help them. So it was kind of 2 things, really. Number one, how do I reach out to the volunteers that we have to say, hey, don't worry, we're still here. You're still valuable. We see you, even if we're not face to face. How do I reach out to my members and say, hey, we see you, even if we're not face to face? You're important. You're valuable.
Could you just say a word about who your members are?
Okay.
Amy.
Yes. Our members are people who have lived experience of homelessness. And that is not necessarily people who are rough sleepiness, although we do work with those people. The vast majority of people that are our members are people who are in temporary accommodation. They're struggling in some way with their, settling somewhere. They don't have the kind of support that people, that you and I have. They don't have the support network. And they are almost all people who have experienced some kind of trauma in their lives.
So what kind of solutions did you come up with, Amy? And how did you, what kind of help did you get?
Okay, so first of all, with one of the first things I did was to start writing things, because whenever I feel something or think something, I write it down. And although I love talking to people and listening, I feel stronger in print.
Mhm.
So I started writing to my, at the request of my director. He said, look, I think you're an unreasonably cheerful person.
That's not what he said.
Yeah.
Me.
Unreasonably cheerful. What's wrong with you? But in the pandemic, you are 100% our secret weapon.
Mhm.
Go home and make something for the staff to build morale.
Yeah.
And he didn't give me any other instructions to that. He didn't say, he didn't stipulate what the format would be.
Yeah.
So I started writing. Letters to my colleagues to say, don't
Sure.
give up. I'm still here. I know you're still there. We'll get through this. And then I hit on the idea that I could record something. My boss said that was good. You have a very good, powerful speaking voice. Why don't you use your voice? So the next thing I did was I noticed that I downloaded a little recording app. And at first I just started reading my essays like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah. And I made loads and loads of mistakes. So I just delete it and record it again and record it again and record it again. I didn't know how to edit anything. So I just did it over and over again until it was perfect. And then sent it round to everybody as an MP3, just
Excellent.
A little tiny bit. And I limited myself in order to make it manageable to sort of no more than 3 minutes. I can just about read 500 words on a page in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And at first I just started sending it around to staff. Staff shared it with their family and friends. Sometimes they play it. It was kind of like a thought for the day type of, thing. And it just started to spread. And still, I didn't upload it onto any kind of online platform. And
so were you distributing it by email? Was that how it was all going?
Yes.
So you're distributing to all your staff, all the people who work with you.
And then
these really good messages, and they get to hear them all in their email. That sounds great.
As often as they want to.
Yeah.
As often as they want to. And then, so I do sort of, one every couple of weeks, because of course it took time to compose and then edit and then practice.
So this is to staff. So this isn't to volunteers or members. This is to your colleagues.
This was just to my colleagues, and then eventually to some of my volunteers, and then they started sharing to their family and their friends.
Excellent.
And then other people in the wider organization nationally heard about it and said, could you send it to us? And so I started sending it to them. So then I was emailing this MP3 out to like loads and loads of people. Eventually it was put on, one of them was put on YouTube because I wrote one. The name of my podcast is An Encouraging Word.
Yeah.
So I pick one word for people to focus on, and then I write something extemporaneously about that. And I had written, one of my words was volunteering. And this was picked up by the national volunteering team. And they actually eventually made a little film. The graphics team created something very nice and visual, and they put music with it. And then suddenly this tiny little thing I was doing was something on YouTube.
Excellent.
And what was it called on YouTube? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was called An Encouraging Word, and it's actually, if you go to Crisis UK, they have a channel, and it's on there, and it's called 10 Ways Volunteering Supports Wellbeing.
Yes, I've got that here. I can share the screen.
It's a 4-minute animation. So I don't know if we've got time for 4 minutes, Sweyn.
No.
We can have a quick look at the beginning of it. Yeah.
Let's have a look at the beginning. Yes.
Yeah.
Chip in if you want to say anything, and I'll pause it.
Okay. Yeah.
So here we go. It's sharing now. So off we go.
10 ways volunteering promotes your well-being. Number 1, volunteering takes you out of yourself. From time to time, I need to be reminded that other people are struggling too. Volunteering offers a welcome distraction from self-centered fretting, shifting my grinding gears to a focus on serving others. Number 2, volunteering lets you try something for free. Unlike moving to a new house, changing jobs, or beginning a new relationship, volunteering lets you change your scenery, meet a new group of people, or try new stuff pretty much risk-free. Started something and it's not for you? You can cheerfully quit with usually no questions asked.
I love that bit.
Number 3.
That's great. Yeah.
And there's 8 more of those.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Just great little snippets of. I listened to it yesterday, and when I was listening to it, I was thinking, my mother should listen to this, because, I've been trying to persuade her to volunteer for years, and she's not read the book. She's generous to charities, but she doesn't give of herself. And I think I think people often think it's there's a lot more giving, but actually you receive so much from being a volunteer.
Oh yeah, and it's a big step. So I was encouraging people to think about volunteering as something that's of benefit to them too, which it always is, or it should always be. Yeah, so we did that. To reach out to my volunteers, I recruited a couple of new volunteers who worked entirely online. I've never met them face to face. We worked remotely. We produced this beautiful volunteer newsletter, which the volunteers named the volunteer. And it was just decided to be a way to reach out to people, to provide news about what our service is doing for our members, news for them about any volunteer weeks going on, or any highlights, and then just whatever things could
So we just have the front page on screen now.
That's
I think
it.
we can.
There it is.
We can just see that. Yeah, using
too
Canva, which is one of our favorite.
I'm not going to press edit design so that we can see more, because who knows what might happen if I did that.
So it's like, nothing will happen. But that was something that was entirely. Canva is designed to be an entirely online service. It's a tool that is just provides stunning results. And then we were able to animate some of the newsletters so that it would never be printed, but people could interact with it. So that was really, really nice.
And how much take up did you have of that, Amy?
So at first, more later, at first it was just for my own volunteers at our Skylight. And then eventually it was shared out across the organization. And now 4 other teams have started newsletters of their own. Yeah,
great. So it sounds like you've given the comms people in crisis a bit of a run for their money.
Oh, they wrote to me and said, you know what, you should probably think about switching careers, because maybe you belong in communications, and I don't know, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you certainly seem to have a talent for it. But that wasn't the only thing that you did more.
Well, the last thing that was really, like, by far, I think, the most valuable, but was the most challenging, was that I created a online member volunteering opportunity by recruiting, training, and supporting our members to form up an interview panel, so that when someone is applying for a job with our organization, they get interviewed by the staff, by their prospective boss, and a panel of staff. But then joining them are members of our service, who can ask pertinent questions about that person's values, about their attitude and approach, and sometimes share their own powerful experience with somebody who's applying to us for a job. We are really careful about who we choose to work with, our most vulnerable people in the city. Yeah. So this was great. It was a great opportunity, but a huge challenge. partly because I was new to Zoom when I started it. None of my members had ever used Zoom, or very few had used Skype. And some of them didn't have the technology. So our Tesco mobile project supplied everyone with smartphones. Then I wrote and delivered a training session online about how to get online, and sent them, photographs of what to do. It was an illustrated guide. And then we all practiced. And then each person wrote a question that they wanted to ask. We have values in the organization like adaptability and dignity and fearlessness. I asked them, which value really speaks to you and why? And then asked them to compose their own question, their own interview question. And then on the day, we had a set of interviews, 4 or 5 candidates for whom my members formed a panel. I trained them to chair, and then to ask questions, to write on the form what that candidate's responses were, and then to do scoring. So I was kind of providing them with training on skills that might help them to get a better job.
Absolutely.
And the process itself, I think, allowed members to put the shoe on the other foot instead of always being the asker. That they were the chooser that time. It was a fantastic experience.
Did you have a feel for how many of your members were completely new to being online, and how many had some online access?
So I trained 5 people to be member panel. And out of those 5, there was only 1 who was really didn't struggle. Everybody else needed a lot of help and support. And she had been a telecommunications person in a previous life. So she didn't sweat, and she helped the other people. In the end, my members were more proficient with Zoom and with interviewing and making breakout rooms and things than the staff. So they really had great skills.
And are they still keeping those skills up? And are they still helping each other?
Oh yes. I mean, and initially, the fear factor was really high for lots of people, and over time, people did become more confident.
There's nothing like having an actual application in mind when you're learning these things. And you not only were you introducing these people to being online, but you're introducing them to interview techniques and scoring techniques and all that sort of stuff. So you actually, I think quite a lot of online kind of awareness and sessions and training, even, it struggles to find the thing that interests the people who are being the trainees. But you seem to have got through that with no problem whatsoever.
Well, it wasn't without its challenges.
No, in concept, I mean.
Absolutely, totally.
I'm sure there were lots of challenges on the way.
Please, feel free to share anything that you remember that was particularly stood out.
Okay, one thing in particular, a lot of it was about getting people the audio right, and being able to sort of know about how to come and leave. But one in particular that I think is worth sharing is I had a member who was a fantastic interviewer and had an ineffable sense of calm. And everybody took turns chairing, and I thought he would be a great chair. But unfortunately, his transport let him down because the bus didn't turn up. Surprise, surprise. West Midlands Travel didn't pick him up when they should. And so I wound up having to train him whilst he was riding home on the bus.
Wow.
And I've been a trainer and facilitator for a wee long time, right? And I kind of just thought, I've never done this. I don't know how this is gonna work. And he kind of made it work, because he managed to get on Zoom and then held his device up and spoke to me. And at one point he got interrupted. And I said, what's up? Is everything okay? And he said, yeah. There's two old ladies asking me, what are you doing? And he said, hang, I'm just going to explain to them. I'm just bear with me. I'm helping to end homelessness.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a JFK response.
That's fantastic.
I'm putting a man on the moon. He said, I'm helping end homelessness. He said, yeah, that's right. Not everybody looks homeless, but you don't know who they are. That's right. That we need to break the stigma. Okay, done.
Back to training.
Yeah.
Sorry, my internet connection dropped there. So I just heard you, Amy, say that the guy said, I'm helping to end homelessness. And I was saying it's like the JFK story where they
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
He asked the cleaner what he was doing, sending people to the moon. Yeah.
I'm helping end homelessness.
That's fantastic.
He did a little spot campaign education there with them, saying, what you mean? Yeah, I was homeless. No, not everybody looks homeless.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing,
Wow.
we need to break the stigma. So I thought, wow, we've educated bus number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
That's a good.
I'd like to meet that person. They sound like a marvelous person. I'm sure all of them are, but
my member panel viewers were amazing. But I have to say, the phrase sweat equity arises. And I did sweat a lot in the beginning in a way that I don't seem to now, because Zoom is like, it's great. It's like the kitchen table. I know what to do with it.
It's a learned thing, like everything else. It's a different way of interacting, but it's once you've got the hang of it, it kind of just works.
Yeah. Yes. What wound up happening, just for these members, a lot of them graduated shortly after there. And went on to work, or they finished their study, or they started something. One guy went off and started volunteering for the social supermarket and, took a better role. And another fellow, went on and started applying for jobs suddenly. So that kind of thing, it works really well. And what we found at Crisis was, if we could train members remotely, then they could interview people anywhere around the country or through our 3 nations. So I've got members who can, do an interview up in Scotland because they're online.
Yeah. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's, the things I've learned, oh, sorry, that's my phone going off and I should have turned it off. Okay, excuse me for a minute.
I'll ask a question. As we hopefully are coming out of the pandemic, how much of this online stuff do you were just touching on it there, I think, how much of this online stuff do you think you'll be able to retain and keep going, or even expand into the rest of Crisis's operations in the UK?
I actually think that these tools won't go away. I think in some ways, after we got over the initial sort of trauma, we've discovered that these give us greater flexibility. So tools like Zoom, being able to use other tools to work and solve problems, like using Jamjar or Mural allows, like, for example, other volunteer coordinators like myself can meet online and work on a document. We can create, we can make films. We've designed training together. People working in Wales, England, and Scotland have all worked together and produced things. So I think, having discovered this, it certainly is a game changer going forward.
Yeah. So do you think that Crisis? I'm not completely certain what services Crisis provides, but do you think that this kind of getting people online could become or has become one? Is that something?
It definitely has.
Yeah. Good.
About 18 months ago, Tesco Mobile provided a project for us. It's going to be 3 years and maybe longer, where vulnerable people who don't have access will join our digital inclusion project and be given devices and data. What we found was it wasn't just that somebody didn't have a phone. Lots of people have phones, but they don't have data.
Don't have data.
They don't have connectivity. So it's about that. So we give people
and
phones
most people also need some sort of, if they're new to it, need some sort of support. It's more than training, it's actual support in actually getting, like you said, it's very nerve-wracking to begin with, but if you get a bit of support, then, it becomes just a thing.
It's really good. It's really, really lovely.
So how many of your members, is it typical for any of them to then come into employment with crisis or get employment through their involvement with crisis?
We actually have a work and learning coach who just focuses on employability with people. And for some, that's going to mean returning to a field that they had to leave for one reason or another. But for many other people, it might be about starting something completely new or entering work for the first time. So we do get quite a few people into things, and I often work with the work coach to help people to access volunteering, because as we know, volunteering somewhere greatly increases your chances of getting paid work in the future. And it's a great process. And some people come to volunteering because they're looking for work, others because they want to have break social isolation, or it is a chance to build experience, or keep their hand in because they're retired, or even as a path to recovery. It's there's lots of different things that we do for people to provide those opportunities. We can't do it for them, but we can. It's not so much about holding their hand; it's about like strengthening their grip.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great phraseology.
That's great.
Amy, you said in your bio that you had experienced both enchantment and terror, and I think you've described some of the enchantment. What was terrifying? What kind of
seat
of the pants?
Totally. Totally. So the thing, my brown trouser moment was realizing that I didn't know how to. I didn't really know how to edit anything. I didn't know fully how to use Zoom until somebody showed me. Similarly with Mural and Jam Jar. One of my most terrifying moments was that I had written a bit of online training for people who new to volunteer management or supervising. And I got everybody in the Mural room. And I don't know if I should explain. Mural is a collaborative tool that allows people to work on a kind of virtual flip chart or whiteboard situation.
Good to explain. Yeah.
And I got everybody in, and Mural. Yes, there it is. Mural usually admits people anonymously as little animals. Now I see they've got people's faces there.
Oh, yes, that's right. It does.
Yeah, so you get octopus, anonymous octopus, and anonymous giraffe, and anonymous gibbon. And so I had all these animals in the room, in this virtual room. And because I didn't really fully understand how to use it, I had laid out virtual colored areas for people to comment on. And I had put other kind of virtual stationery to one side. And what I realized then was that even if I know what I'm doing, it's really important to be very clear to other people about what you expect of them in the virtual room, just as I would if I was training in a real room. That was a real gear change for me when I realized that, like, Anonymous Octopus had grabbed handfuls of stationery and was making their way towards the exit. And I had to bring them back and take the Post-it notes away from them,
The thing I sometimes find with mural is I can't even remember which animal I am.
Right. Right. I never know what animal I am. And sometimes I grab other people's animal and it was a mess. It was a genuine mess. So I think it took me a while to sort of get there. And there were I remember that there were a lot of meetings where I was just sweating and kind of being afraid to move too. Yeah. There was sometimes in meetings, if I wasn't quite sure what to do, I'd pretend to make my face freeze. And so that I would get out of having to, so it's been a long journey. Yeah. It's been a long journey, and I certainly have needed my sense of humor and my sense of the absurd. I think it's quite a useful thing, don't you think?
It's very useful.
We don't take ourselves too seriously here. We love doing this, but we're not. I think, as we said off camera, we're not into high production values. We make a decent.
We do prepare, though. We do prepare.
We do.
Yes, you do.
Well prepared. But yeah, it's good to. It's good. I think it's good to show other people that this doesn't have to be scary. It's something that other people can do. And John Popham, our beloved founder, he would have been annoyed, I think, if we tried to make out that it was more complicated than it is. We've learned things along the way, and I think one of the things we've all learned is that it's when you're running an event that's on Zoom or any other video conferencing, you can't just throw people in and let them get on with it. Somebody needs to be there to kind of make the technology work, or to be there in the room when people come back to say, I don't know what I'm doing or what's happening, or, I need help. So,
Somebody's got to focus on that.
Support is always important.
I absolutely learned that.
Talking of editing, I had my second ever experience of editing a video yesterday in iMovie. And the reason I had to edit it was because there's a group here called Sighthounds and Friends in Orkney, which is greyhounds and lurchers and other types of dog. And quite often on a Sunday, we all have a walk together somewhere. We all meet and take our dogs for. It helps to socialize the dogs, helps to socialize some of the adults as well, some of the humans as well. But anyway, so I thought, I'll just take some video of this walk so that I get all the dogs in it. And then I watched it back afterwards, and I realized I'd consistently called one of the dogs by completely the wrong name throughout. So I decided to go in and edit out every few seconds where I said the name. So for that sort of reason, I'm all in favor of editing, but it's not something that we're very enthusiastic about here on this program. Although, having seen your beautiful video, and I'll try and listen to some of your podcast audio as well, it does have a place.
Yeah, I think
it's the notes still worth having.
Yeah, the notes that we put on after the show on the YouTube, I think, will be useful to other people who are looking into this sort of area, because I think we pick out things that are relevant to lots of people, and guests obviously bring a whole new flavor of things that we might not necessarily have previously considered. I mean, I was going to say earlier about discovering things in Scotland and stuff, because Sweyn and I have done so many programs now. We've talked about different things, including the famous Orkney International Science Festival. I want to go to Orkney. It's just fantastic. And they put all their work online. Sweyn has been a linchpin in kind of making sure that everything goes well with it.
With the festival, it's been great fun. Yes, it's been a real learning experience.
It's magic to see all these things.
I completely empathize with your sweat equity comment. I think that's
emphasis on the sweat. It's a wonderful. I'm so glad in a way that I was kind of pushed towards that, because pushed towards learning these new skills.
I think there's a lot of people in that position after the pandemic. The pandemic has been awful. It's a terrible thing. But one of the few upsides really has been that it's really, I was going to say empowered, but it's actually forced people to let's just not beat about the bush. It's basically forced people to look at these tools and say, well, okay, they're maybe not exactly like how I want to deliver my lovely training course fully in control of the room and the environment and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Maybe I will have to train somebody on a bus now and again, but it's not impossible. You know,
Absolutely.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
And having done it once, it definitely was something that I felt, oh, I could do this.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a nice feeling.
Trainer after trainer, particularly trainers that I've spoken to during the pandemic has had this reaction, whereas almost any training organization or trainer that I spoke to before the pandemic had said, instead of you traveling 600 miles to come here and do the course, or instead of me spending 2 days getting to wherever you've got a training room somewhere, could we not just do it by some kind of video link? Oh, no, that wouldn't work at all.
Can't be done.
Can't be done.
Well, we know now we know it can be done.
It can be done.
Yeah.
It can be done.
So Amy, did the kind of how people saw crisis in Coventry, did it change, do you think, during the pandemic then, with all these new additions, for good or bad, or, you know?
So did it change how people thought of us? I think we definitely changed how our member base viewed technology and all the things that could be possible, because we got them doing podcasts, we got them writing and performing things that could be online.
Yep.
We did an online art show with an art gallery online. That was a lovely thing. So I think we changed perceptions and expectations in that way. I like to think that we raised our profile somewhat and encouraged people to support us. And I certainly am looking forward to continuing to expand our volunteer base and grow our what our members can do online.
I feel there must be a group of people who might find it easier to volunteer when using online tools than being in person. There's a whole resource there to be tapped by organizations like yours, I would have thought.
Oh yeah. Last year in the summertime, we one of our volunteers tutored some of our members one-to-one online. So they would sit out in their garden on a little bench and their members and speak to the members and provide training on budgeting and banking and renting ready and things like that. Anything that can be delivered face to face pretty much could be delivered online. And so
So would you say, Crisis is not a small organization. It has branches around the country, sadly needed, but obviously a great service as well. Would you say it's a more digital organization now?
I think so. I think it's difficult to know. I know prior to the pandemic, we rarely used Skype. And Skype was our main tool. And mostly we just traveled all over meeting up. And I think now we have a much more comfortable experience and relationship with online tools. So we're more likely to meet up with remote people online.
Sure.
And that saves time and everything.
You've given us evidence of that already by referring to the materials that you've jointly developed with Scotland and Wales. That's I think some of the benefit of some of this online stuff. Okay, maybe when we get back to normal, there will be a bit of traveling around again, but maybe it won't just quite be so much, and maybe the quality of interactions in between times can be, can probably make more use of the time we've got together with other people face to face by having prepared or dealt with them previously online.
Yes,
I think we're still evolving that methodology.
Yeah, definitely. So,
I know when I meet people face to face now, I love being with people, and I really value that time now, and it's made it more special, and you appreciate it more. So I think it's good to have the options.
So it's so much about question of what the purpose of the work that you're doing is, and what the expectation. If you can if you can kind of manage expectations a bit about among either a staff group or a group of volunteers or a group of what you call members, service users, as some might call them, then I think quite a lot of positive stuff could come out of that just by us getting over ourselves a bit.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. If I could sum up my experience during the pandemic, it would probably be, get over yourself.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Wipe the sweat. And just keep on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep getting on.
Yeah.
Amy, we usually have a few stories as well to kind of fit in before the end of the show. If you don't mind, we'll just go to one of those. Sweyn, I wanted to go to the one on about Indiana. It's towards the end of the links, and this was one a diverse strategy to address digital exclusion. And I like this one because it's kind of putting power in people's own hands to challenge digital exclusion. So I spotted this on a website. It was an education website. Purdue University, I think, is the Purdue University is the background to it. And this was talking about how obviously COVID provided a significant boost to the awareness on digital exclusion. As we know, it would have taken at least 3 to 5 years to reach its current level. And the article talks about within this context, states and communities are actively addressing digital inclusion in the US and in other countries. And so innovative programs have been developed. So prior to COVID, the state of Indiana announced what is known as the Next Level Connections NLC broadband program in 2018. And this consisted of multiple phases and was provider driven. And to date, more than $79 million were awarded, providing service to more than 21,900 homes and commercial locations. And round 3 awards are expected to be announced in April of this year. But in this latest version, a competitive application component has been added. And this provides an opportunity for providers to propose serving exact addresses as the original application, but at a cheaper price and with a similar or faster network. But 2 new programs have been added during the 2021 legislative session, and these complement the existing programs in multiple ways, resulting in Indiana having a diverse toolbox to address digital exclusion. One of these programs may offer a subsidy to student households, rural clinics, and schools to pay for their internet service. And the other program, the Indiana Connectivity Program, ICP, also awards funding to providers, but in a distinct, innovative way. While providers submit letters of intent in the NLC program, selecting where to build with minimal input from communities, Indiana residents and businesses apply for broadband service in the ICP. So interested parties can apply for ICP by calling a call center or going online. So it's a consumer-driven versus a provider-driven program, and it might seem like a minor change, but I think this is fundamental, and I would love to see this happening in the UK. Addresses that apply to ICP that will be built with federal funds or by previous NLC projects are removed, leaving the remaining ICP addresses staged for challenge. And this is another key difference. While NLC addresses may be successfully challenged based on the ability to provide service within 10 days of a network build completed within 18 months, ICP addresses can only be challenged if that address is already served with an actual 25 Mbps download and 3 Mbps upload service. And the way to evaluate these challenges is with speed tests.
Wow.
So addresses that remain after the challenge process are bundled by the local federal agency, or OCRA, and posted for providers to bid on using an online portal. So this is a robust toolbox to address digital exclusion in the state. And the article is encouraging communities to work with their providers as they apply for NLC funds, while also promoting the ICP application. And they're talking about drives to be organised throughout the community, encouraging neighbours to encourage other neighbours to apply for ICP, to make addresses be bundled. So while service isn't guaranteed, it's important to be included in the database, and completing as many speed tests as possible is critical. And I just thought, power back to the people, get people to say where they think, better services should be provided. I thought this was a brilliant story. So, I mean, Sweyn, you can understand this better than I can because you know the technology more, but I just think the potential.
I think the technology is quite simple. It's fast broadband, and it's all to do with who gets it and how fast. And the market in the US is a bit different from the one in the UK, in that there tend to be only 1 or 2 internet providers in each location. So, but nevertheless, this does look like a really good scheme. I particularly liked how it was based on actual internet speeds at the address, not some kind of weird imagined possible average.
Yeah, what might be available, exactly.
That a company might say is available either in a postcode area or an exchange area or whatever.
So I'm now thinking, obviously, of Northfield and Edgbaston, thinking let's have a speed test day where everybody tests their speed, and then we can have that data to lobby for better services.
It would also be an opportunity to educate people about how properly to test their speed as well, because that's quite important.
Yeah. So let's think about that for a future show. Yeah. And this brings us to the end of our show for today.
Amy,
we are
at the very
so
end.
pleased. I know it's always a pleasure. Amy, if people want to find you online, we usually ask our guests what's the best place. Are you on Twitter? Are you on Facebook or Instagram?
Well, the best place to find me probably is I'm in I belong to a poetry group called Fire and Dust. Mm-hmm. And some of my work is there and things like that. So they should check that out.
Okay, Fire and Dust. Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's just fascinating.
Great.
All you've done. Well done. Kudos to you. And we look forward to having you on the show again in the future.
Thank you. It's really fun. You guys are great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye.